are slightly changed here for me because of being a female. And maybe there's not just one experience. I can share mine after you're done. And it's not just one, it was kind of a series of things. But I am kind of curious what that was like for you.
Yeah, I'll just go since I'm here. Yeah. I think I was really lucky in that my family all plays music, and including my mom, and even just but even with that and having a more level playing field and music being accessible and encouraged in my family, I knew the rules were different for my mom than for my dad or for my brothers, and so she would tell stories of whenever we were kids and she'd be trying to play guitar and we'd crawl up in her lap and put our hands on the strings and mute them and and I knew that she not only had rhythm guitar duties, she had mom duties. She was going to be the one who was taking care of all the things, right? And I knew that the men in my family, it's not that they didn't want to help, that just wasn't part of their job description, and just culturally, and so I knew that for me that none of my other duties were going to go away just because I was a bass player when I was playing. So I think that was part of it. And I also just knew from my mom and other women, it's like you were nearly expected to read the room a little differently and to be the peacemaker of the group, of the ensemble a little bit more. And that if anybody's toes got stepped on, you saw the women not get as ruffled, and I think that's a cultural thing in many things, but I saw it especially, so I think a specific example of my solo got skipped, or something as a woman and as a bass player, and if it would have been a man in the group, you would have heard about it, right? But the women were just going to be like, it's fine, cool, maybe I'll speak up next time, maybe I won't, kind of thing. Yeah. So, and that still happens, even decades of playing and establishing myself as more of a soloist is if my solo gets skipped, I've got to suck it up, and I don't get to throw a fit kind of thing. So that's one such thing that I noticed being different as a woman. And for me too, especially as an upright bass player, and so I've got this huge instrument I'm hauling around, there are certain parts of the country where I feel like I'm offending the men around me if I don't let them carry my instrument, and I insist. It's like, no, man, I really want to carry my own instrument, and just trying to explain that in a kind way, where it's like, man, thank you so much for wanting to help me, and yes, I'm going to carry this by myself because it's my instrument. So those are a couple specifics in my experience. So hand it off.
Okay, I definitely remember being it was pretty early on in my career, and when you're starting out, a lot of even working for a company, so much of it is about who you know and what they think and wanting to be requested and all this other stuff to go out on tours and do gigs. And I did a festival with someone who's a really good friend of mine and a really great human being, but we were sitting down at catering or something during this festival, and he was like, well, you're fantastic, I would love to have you as my tech on my tour. And I was like, oh cool, like it was my first real gig with Claire. I was super excited. I was like, this is it. And he goes, but my tour can't take women because of X, Y, or Z, and listed some reason. And while I haven't really dealt as well, I shouldn't say nobody has come out to me and said, you can't do your job because you're a woman. And I haven't necessarily felt that way. But it was one of those things that I was like, oh, like that's it. Like that's the thing. And it's not necessarily, it's seen as for the betterment for us, like it's for you, or it's for this, or it's for other women that are on the tour, or for band wives, or for whatever reason, but it comes down to the same thing of, well, it's because I am. And I was like, oh, okay. But I will say that I haven't faced as much of that now. More of what I find nowadays is now that I'm in a leadership position, people who are local, people who don't know me, people in venues that I'm coming into will always assume that the person in charge is the male member of my crew. Yeah. So I've had some, which, like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do a good job and I'm going to change their mind, but it's so interesting to me that happens. And I do think that there's more women and that'll slowly start to change, and I've had some crews that are just all girls, which is pretty badass, but Yeah, but it still does exist, and I think those sort of underlying things like still happen, so.
Yeah.
I can chirp in. Thankfully, I haven't run into too many scenarios where it was just super obvious. I'm very grateful for that, but I have witnessed many a times in other camps and being around other female artists, things happen to them in front of me and while I'm working with them, and one of those things where I was like, oh wow, I didn't really ever think about it this way, but I worked for an artist who is an incredible artist, and I played in her band with her and just to fill in, and she had an issue that she was really trying to get resolved and needed to bring it to management, and had been constantly trying to reach out to them and telling them about this certain instance, and she just kept getting ignored or not as, her opinions weren't getting as received as some of the other artists that that manager was managing at the time. And I did notice that the men under that same management company were getting a lot more attention than this particular artist. It was like, let's take care of them first, and then we'll get to her things that she needs. And it's like the way they responded to the men's needs versus the females' needs in that scenario was like, if the woman brings it up, she was considered to be complaining or, high maintenance and, a diva. The men brought things up and they were like, oh yeah, man, like we'll get on that right now. Like, absolutely. Yeah. So it's, I witnessed that firsthand, and I was like, man, that's still happening these days in the industry. And so that was kind of my first experience and witness to that sort of situation. So,
Yeah.
Interesting. I would just say, what really occurred to me was just even all the luckily have been organizations that have really been caring, not really putting down women or anything, but one thing I did feel, especially starting to play music, 12 years ago or whatever, was just almost like a possessiveness, because I'm a hard worker, or show up, I'm diligent in whatever field, whether it was doing sound or tech or doing whatever, and then almost like whoever the boss man was, whoever the guys that were around me began to almost possessive of me. And being an independent person that I am, just not doing everything. No, like it's not gonna, And so that's what really caught my attention, I think, initially, was that,
Yeah. And I hope that everyone here knows that we, in this panel, our objective is not to kind of like push down a gender or to like
Yeah.
make another